women have to be given a chance to come up. So we have undertaken, for the first time since independence, we teach them how to make houses. We teach them how to get money from the government, to audit, to hold panchayats, to look after the women in their village more than the men. By that I mean make sure the girls go to school, make sure no women are being beaten in your village, make sure that that the teacher comes to school, make sure there's no stalking going on, etc., etc. How to plant trees and put each tree, a fruit tree, in the name of a widow, so that she has some amdani at some point in her life. Things like that. And we started the training from Hyderabad. We got 40 women in. They came in with their husbands and their gungats, and they left without their gungats and hopefully without their husbands, but they left with their husbands, who were then put into a different room while they were trained. And at the end of 3 days, you can't imagine the change in them. They wanted to be in a WhatsApp group, believe it or not, so that they could exchange information with each other on what they were doing. They all came up with ideas, they learnt like sponges, soaking information, and so we have started with Jharkhand as a whole state. And if that goes well, we then spread it to the other states. I'm getting a bit worried that it's taking so long, because if I do it state by state by state, these women will have finished their term of 5 years. So we're trying to get other groups involved, So just yesterday I was speaking to the BJP women's group, which is full of really good, positive women, and saying that why don't you take over the training of Sarpanchinis? There are only 8,000 in Telangana. And that just means if you divide them into 40 each, that requires how much training? 200 sessions of 3 days each. And that would take you less than 2 months, because you divide yourselves up. So let's see if they take it up, but you can if you want. And it makes a huge difference, because then you suddenly have an empowered woman right at the base. And from there she'll want to be a councillor in a city, then she'll want to be mayor, then she'll want to be MLA, and then you suddenly have India as she really is. So that's one of the things we're doing. Then of course you know that we tried, one of the things that I tried, and it's an important thing in empowering both woman and child, is to increase the maternity leave. And as a result, we got one of the highest in the world, in fact the 4th highest in the world, maternity leave of 26.5 weeks. And so that gives you paid leave to stay home and look after your child. And what that will do, hopefully, is increase the immunity of the child from longer breastfeeding and far more bonding between mother and child. And I'm happy we did that. So that's one of the things we did. And of course, the men immediately wanted 6.5 months leave themselves. And I came under quite a lot of flack for not giving them the leave. But then I just said, the mother's already stressed. She doesn't want another child in the house. But of course, that's off the record. So another thing we've done is panic buttons. Now, those should have been released with great fanfare in January, but we're horribly late. We're 9 months late, because while we have done our part, the Home Ministry is still doing security studies on them. And what this is that every cell phone now, in all your new cell phones, every one of them, there is a panic button. If you press it, the police will come. Now, what we're trying to do is put this panic button and put another button along with it, another button or another app, or whichever way it goes, called the shout out, which is the police ko 1 ghanta lagta aane mein, even at the best of times. But suppose I'm in a terrible situation and I'm going to get hurt. When I press this button, 10 people around me should be able to hear it. Not my relatives, not people living in another country, another city, who are just going to panic, but 10 physical strangers in front of me, who will then, hopefully one of them will respond to my pain or my panic. So that will be a big thing when it finally happens. It will happen, it's just taking some time. Regarding the widows, we have started the largest, and I'll inaugurate it 2 months from now. I'm going to ask the Prime Minister to inaugurate it in Rishikesh, not Rishikesh, Mathura, Brindavan, sorry, I'm carrying on, Brindavan. We have taken a property and built it for 1,000 widows. And it's so beautiful, it's a built-in little city for just widows who've been dumped and meant to live on the road. And I got this idea from a girl I gave a national award to last year. We've made the Nari Shakti Awards really important awards now. So we're looking for women who are innovative and amazing enough to give these awards to. It's the highest award in the country. So again, it's been started by us. And so one of the women we gave Nari Shakti Award to was a woman who came to me, and what she does is she lives in Brindavan and only to cremate the bodies of widows who are found on the street. And every day she finds one, every day. And she buys them the clothes, because many of them die nanga panga. And she takes them and she cremates them herself. So we gave her a national award, but the point is, the idea came to, why should we not have homes for them? So we've built this home for 1,000 widows with their own nursery and their own whatever, things to do and things to learn. And if this does well, I'm going to build one in Banaras, because that's where they're dumped, one in Gaya, where they're dumped. We're just sort of looking for where will the maximum widows be dumped. And then we'll pick them up from there. So that's one of the bricks and mortar thing that we have done. We have, I have a booklet with me, which I'm going to leave with Kamini, about the different things that we have done. For instance, when I came in, acid attacks were things that you cried over and you felt very sorry for everybody, but then you didn't do anything for the woman. And so I had acid attack included in disabilities. So now she gets a lifelong job or a pension or something, whichever any other disabled person gets, she gets that, if she's been the victim of an acid attack. So that's another thing that's come in, that's changed. We have now, at the moment, what I'm working on is something that perhaps you don't identify with, but in the north it's very prevalent. That is, men come in from abroad, get married to a woman. Dhoom dhamake se rasam, no, I'm not talking about the Hyderabad young children. That is also part of that. I was going to come to that. But this one is, dhoom dhamake se shadi ho gayi hai, dehej vehej le liya, phi liya, you live for a little bit, and then no divorce, nothing. You just say, okay, I'm just going, and then when I get your visa, we'll send for you. And that's the last time you ever see them. And this is so happening in Punjab and Haryana and Delhi. And we get these frantic calls from women saying, please help me, my husband is leaving in 2 days and I know he's going to dump me. And then they stay with the husband's family for the next 3 months, because they go through the charade, the family, that it's been everybody's going to live happily ever after, he's going to send for you, and then all of a sudden then you get chucked out. And you're pregnant by then, you have no idea what's happening, and you never see your husband again. So now we have no way to repair this situation. We have no protocols in place with England or America. We have nothing happening. So we're working on how to establish protocols so that either those people get returned or they get arrested or something happens for the woman who's been abandoned. Then we have another important thing that we've done, which is again part of this wall of women's empowerment, is insist and establish sexual harassment work committees in every working place. Any company over 10 people which doesn't have them can actually fold up as a company and has to put it in. We're working towards putting into your financial audit at the end of the year. But now, even now, if you don't do it, forget about financial audits, you can be shut down. So government or non-government, anybody can complain that my company or my government office doesn't have a sexual harassment committee. And those sexual harassment committees have all been told how to work. It's on the net. They know how to work, and they have to work responsibly, so that a woman, because the statistics in a small survey done by an NGO of I think 2,000 or 3,000 women, we're now using her to do a much larger audit, but she did a small one, and they found 84% of women were harassed in their first year of work. Now that harassment doesn't necessarily have to be rape. It can be brushing against you. Many people are threatened by that. At my age, I'm still threatened by somebody who'll come and brush against you just for as a power play. It's sometimes not sexual. It's just to show you who's boss. Or people who eat and shove their face close to yours, just to make it. You've been there, right? So you know what I'm talking about. We're talking about people who crack dirty jokes in front of you. People who, talk about their sexual exploits with their wives or girlfriends in front of you. Not nice, not nice. and it's part of harassment. So if 84% of women have experienced that, then it's about time that they learned how to complain. We just do not want inappropriate behavior anymore. And so this has given you the right to complain. I have now 2 boxes on the net. One is an e-box for children. It's called the POCSO e-box, POCSO. And what it is it's about sexual harassment of children, and they can complain themselves or their mothers or whoever they want to complain. It's completely confidential. So far we've received about 600 complaints, all of which have been dealt with. Children, in the beginning I thought perhaps we should put actual boxes in every school. But then that box are very dangerous items like dynamite waiting to blow up in case you open the box. Because most sexual harassment takes place within male relatives, neighbors, people of authority, fathers, friends, people you don't want to tell the school. And if somebody broke that box open, then you would know, everybody would know. So it would be embarrassing for the child. So we turned this into an e-box, and that e-box, I need you to actually tell principals, to tell their children that it exists. We have a film called Komal, which won me the national award, but which is compulsory for all schools to show, where it's called Good Touch, Bad Touch. And it has to be shown. So if your children's school hasn't done it, please make them show it. There is, so we have one for women. The Sexual Harassment Committee one for women it was made and dhoom dhamake se release hua. And in the process of releasing it, I realized that it was only for government offices. So now I told them that now it's to be for everybody. So they've promised that in a week or so, it will be open to anybody who complains. So once that happens, have a look at our site, WCD, and see whether the box is there. And if you have a problem, so far I've got a particular cell that is working outside this called WCD it's called min-WCD, that's Minister of WCD at nic.in. And lots of people write in about harassment. And we then immediately get a team that's only job is to deal with harassment. And what does harassment mean? Sometimes we forget the parameters of shame, of how much shame can be upon us. One girl wrote to me and she said, my company paid for my medical checkup. So I went to a hospital in Bangalore, paid the 8,000 rupees that I'd been given, and in return they were supposed to do a full body checkup. And she said, but when it came to the gynecological parts, I got up, I changed my clothes, I went in there, and there was a man. And she said, I was so embarrassed and so shamed at having a man look at me without my clothes on that I ran from there. So she actually wrote this to me. And I rang up the hospital and I said, you can't do this, not allowed. So they then rang up the girl, apologized, got her back in, and now I put a board outside saying that there will be female gynecologists for female checkers. But it's something that should be mandatory in every hospital. The other places where I poke my nose and where things are coming to, changing is cesareans. A cesarean is a frightening operation. I know many of you here may have had cesareans, but remember this, it is invasive, it tears through your body. You may seem as if you're superficially healed, but it actually takes about 2 years to heal. All the tissue that has been, you can't have more than 2 children with it. And it's only done for convenience. Now in a normal civilized society, 10% of all birth deliveries are cesareans. In this country, it's 70%. Now, there has to be something wrong with the society that goes to 70%. Because A, it cannot be done at your convenience. You stand a jolly good chance of damaging yourselves, your children, everybody. And once you have a cesarean, you're on antibiotics, you can't feed your baby properly for the first few days because you're in so much pain. Do you really want to do this? So, I have now said that, all right, let's do it gently. But let's do it, and that is every hospital that has gynecological services has to have a board outside which says how many cesareans they have done this month, so that you can take a call for yourself whether you actually want to go in for a baby in that hospital or not. So that's the first step before we move into taking much harsher action in this. We have a festival coming up, which I do every year, and that is on women who do make organic food. And this is something I told Kamini ji when she became. I said, why don't you make your year the year of organic food? And that is, anybody who grows any organic food across India, it has to be promoted. It has to be. And if we're going to save ourselves from cancers and everything else. So if we could provide a market to organic food, then the prices of organic food would go down. Now in this country, we have 23,000 different kinds of rice. You have 200 kinds of rajma. Not just that one, dark maroon bean. You have speckled and white and black and all sorts of things. But we don't know the foods. We don't know the foods because all of them are disappearing under our eyes because chemicals are bringing the variety down. So we have this amazing Mela in Delhi, which lasts for 15 days every year, which I started, and which we sell several crores worth. And people come in from all over India. Now Telangana has a huge host of women, very poor women, who are doing, who are growing millets, which is the one thing you should be eating instead of wheat and rice. And they call themselves the Millet Sisters. And I hope that Kamini will bring them in here and make them give you a demonstration and a talk on what, or with her skills, if you could put up every year, Fiki could put up one organic mela. It would be so fantastic. If I can sell a crore, 2 crores worth, you can sell exactly the same thing. And it would become a household word across India. At the moment, Ahmedabad is doing it, started by one man called Dr. Anil Gupta, who is a teacher at IIM. And it's so big, 50,000 people now go there. So perhaps that's an idea I could leave with you that should be undertaken. What is on my agenda at the moment? I haven't even gone into children's issues, which we've done a huge amount of work for. But what is on my agenda now is trafficking, a bill on trafficking. So far, there is nothing, there's no regulations on trafficking except one, and that is the girl who is trafficked is the perpetrator, and so she goes to jail. Which is so bizarre, because as it is, she's been kidnapped, she's been the one who's been forced into prostitution, and now to bung her into jail for 2 years makes no sense to me at all. So we've gone with the most progressive, ideas and with a view towards catching the perpetrators and treating the victim as a victim should be treated. And that is on the anvil. Let's see how long it takes to go through. These are some of the things I've done. I'm not going to take up more time because I can see Mr. Sudhir is waiting to grill me on the rest. I have a few ideas. One is what Fiki could do. One is what I suggested to the president. And this I'm going to suggest to you here. We have a large number of people who make documentaries in India. Now these documentaries they never get seen by anybody. People make them because they are so pushed by the plight of something that they absolutely have to record it. So you normally get a documentary made of somebody who needs to see the sunlight. I just saw a film made in Tamil, I think, called The Railway Children. It's utterly beautiful, but no cinema house would have it, even though it's a fiction, but based on fact. And I showed it to people. Now what we need to do is to get change makers, influencers, to see these documentaries. If Fiki would start every session of theirs with a documentary proposed by anybody, because you have so many documentary centers, some of you people know people who have documents. I have an 8-minute documentary of elephants in Amer, the Amer fort in Rajasthan, because they hate climbing up and down, elephants are not supposed to be in Rajasthan, every night they take a welding karte hai na, fire, and they make holes in their feet. And if you look at their feet from underneath, there are no feet, they're just caverns inside. And all the elephants that we filmed on died. I mean, but after 2 years, 3 years of just having holes that go right all the way up. And then when they get really angry and edgy, then they blind them. So 50% of those elephants are blind that are going up and down. Now, if we showed you a documentary, you would have a husband or somebody you knew who changed policy, and you would then work as hard as I did to change it, and maybe you'd be more successful than me. Like that, if you came across this railway children one, it was so frightening for me. It was so frightening for me to see it, because even though I'm the Minister of Children, I had no idea of what actually happens. And it led to policy change. I have now adopted railway stations. And we have caught over 35,000 children being kidnapped. In one station alone in Jhansi, not Jhansi, something smaller than Jhansi, we caught 35 or 34 children at one time, 32 children, at one time being herded up. We have put posters in every single train across India, in which if you get onto a train, you will see those posters, and if you don't, tell me, saying that if you see a woman or a child traveling alone or uncomfortable in their society or being trafficked, then phone these numbers. And we've given 3 numbers, and within the hour we arrive. Within the hour, you just have to phone. 4 lakh women have been rescued off those trains. So we have, but one documentary did it. Do you understand? This one documentary did it. So if Vicky could show you documentaries, choose whatever at random. An animal documentary, a children documentary, any other documentary. Now, for instance, when I'm going back now, a girl from Bombay has written to me at random. She called Alpua. She SMS'd me yesterday saying that there's this amazing documentary about this girl called Deepika, who was born in a very, very poor family. This happened to her, that happened to her, and now she's become #1 archer in the world. But how she got there with no help and blah and blah and blah. And she said, do you think that you could show the documentary? So on Tuesday, right off the bat, sitting in Hyderabad, I rang up the ministry and said, I want the judges in, I want the press in, I want everybody in to see this documentary, to see what we do to our sports people. So maybe you could watch a documentary like that. And it's called Ladies First. So you can have a look at that documentary when you feel like. So maybe one thing could be documentaries. The second could be, as I said, organic, having the organic mela. Then if you're going to train women, train them, yes, in all the things that Kamini said she was training them on. It's great. But also train them on things that earn a lot of money. We went through this silly phase where we were training women to make paper bags, where they would earn 10 paisa per paper bag. Would you sit down and earn 10 paisa per paper bag? Why should they do it? It's not fair. So why not train them for things that Hyderabad was mashhoor for and which have suddenly disappeared, like tissue culture. All the forest departments need trees. Hyderabad was the center of tissue culture for the world. You were supplying tulips to Holland. And all of a sudden, it disappeared like that. And where I was talking to the secretary today and saying, where the hell has tissue culture gone? And he said, no, all the people who were doing tissue culture then sold their land as real estate, and then those who rented out to the IT bhavans. And so IT took the place of tissue culture, but we need both. So and it's not too difficult to learn. If you were to teach a woman how to clone a greenhouse, some greenhouse, if she were to make, for instance, I'll give you an example of what I've done in Pilibhit. Somebody not cloned, made an apple which grows in the summer and grows in the plains. So then I took all of them, the whole lot, and have given it to my constituency and said, grow these apples, because each one we've been guaranteed, each tree grows 2 quintals worth. Each kilo is 80 rupees to 100 rupees in apples. We are the largest importers of apples in the world. Why are we eating Californian apples and those awful red apples? I got an apple as an experiment in January. Manoj, who works with me, knows about this. I got an apple and put it on my puja table and said, okay, now let's see how long you last. It finally collapsed in the middle of May. It was unbelievable. Not a fly would sit on it. Nothing would sit on it because it had been waxed and chemicalized and all those red apples. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, I brought those apples and we've started growing them. And in the first 2 years itself, apples have started appearing on the trees. And it's wonderful to see that somebody who's got no land and has grown an apple tree behind their house is going to get 2 quintals of apples and sell them and earn 20,000 rupees or 30,000 rupees out of nothing. So maybe if we could, teach things where you grow, where you don't have land. So that could be another thing. And that's it. I'm starting now a new thing, which you please tweet me on. I went yesterday to the Secunderabad Defense Academy, whatever. Yeah. And one man stood up after I'd spoken, and he was saying that, women are so mean to women. And the whole violence of women on women, and the whole reason why they are not as powerful as they should be, is because they're so mean to each other. And he said, look, mothers-in-law are mean to daughters-in-law. And I said, it's true. The actual science of this, because we've studied it as a science, and the science of this is that victims are victims because victims are mean to other victims. People in jail together will tattle on each other. People who have some kind of oppressor on them will suck up to the oppressor and start being mean. You'll find 6 women perfectly normal and happy with each other. Let one rotten little male come and sit down there, even if he's 14 years old with big pimples, and suddenly you'll find everybody's equation with each other changing. It's so strange. It's so weird. It's the victim syndrome. So we're starting something about, I'm a woman. I will not be mean to any women. And if we could adopt that as some kind of motto and stop being mean, mothers-in-law, daughters-in-law, however scared you are of your mother-in-law, now that I have a daughter-in-law, she would be as scared of me if I were to behave badly. It's just that she's my best friend. And I'm so lucky to have her. And I tell her that every day. So if we were just to get into loving, caring relationships, if your mother-in-law is threatened by you right in the beginning, then it's for you to not be threatened back. As she says in Pretty Woman, when that man says, and then the prince saved the princess, and then what did she do? And she said she saved him right back. So if we were to be just nice to each other, we would stop being victims. We would become empowered immediately. As a force, we are invincible. I was talking to HRD, and in the women's policy, I had written that any girl getting more than 75% should get a scholarship. And he said, Menka ji, don't do this to me. He said, there is no girl that gets under 75%. He said, I'll go bankrupt. He said, it's those poor boys that you have to say 75%. He said, mushkil se 50 se zyada nikal aate hain. So I'm saying that we are invincible, but only if they're nice to each other. So next time a woman says something awful about your clothes, it doesn't matter. She's a victim, think of her as a victim. If you're nice back, she will stop being a victim, and so will you. So let's do that for empowerment. Thank you.